Hello everyone, it is I, OmnusI, here once more in my lair for you, answering another question from the RPG Brigade, a Facebook group dedicated to spreading our love of role-playing games and inspiring others in new ways to enjoy the game or to come in and try it. And this being the 10th day, we have the 10th question of the month. And this one is a fun one for introspection. How has gaming changed you? That's a fun question. For those of you who know me, and I have opened up these questions to my personal homepage on Facebook. Not just OmnusI, but yours truly, Rob Gustafson. I've put this up on my Facebook because I wanted my family and friends, people who have known me far longer than the internet, from before I went to college, and may have dropped off the face of the earth for an awful lot of people. Some of whom I've communicated with again. Awful lot who also share my hobby and other facets of my life, from work or whatever. And either, don't know me as well as you used to, or, interested in the changes. I didn't always look like this. Maybe you're curious why. And a lot of the changes that I've had in my life, I can attribute fairly directly, or at least tangentially, to my hobby of role-playing games, which sounds weird and possibly cultish, but I assure you it's much more innocent than that. I first learned about role-playing games way back in the day when I was about 8 or 9 years old. My parents got a box set of Dungeons and Dragons. And they weren't interested in it, but I devoured it. I read all the books. I didn't understand everything. There was nobody there to take me by my hand, and a lot of it was written in fairly high language that I didn't get. There were a lot of acronyms and abbreviations and things. So to me, it was another source of fantasy literature. And back then, I was reading Tolkien and a great number of other fantasy works, as well as stuff that was a little bit more age appropriate or older. I loved trivia and history and things like that. But that was my first brush with role-playing games, and it was a complete whiff. There was nobody else to share my interest in it, nobody else to play it with, so I didn't. That box set got lost, and I regret that. I wish I had ended up with it, honestly. But it's gone. It's lost. It's an ancient part of history. So the next time that I had a brush with role-playing games came when I was in 8th grade, going to 9th. And I got a set, the basic set of Dungeons and Dragons for, I believe, a birthday present. I also found somebody else who liked role-playing games during my freshman year of high school. He brought back this love of games because we were friends at the time, and then he left to go off to another school, and there he met people who were head over heels in love with these games. And he brought that back to me, and so I got the basic red box set of Dungeons and Dragons from the Back Me set, and we played at his house, at my house, through that summer. Eventually, before that, I was very introverted, very. I had a lot of baggage going on. I was fairly intelligent. I was not athletic at any rate. And kids are cruel. Put up with a lot of emotional scars from my childhood. But, I was smart. I did good at the grades and everything. Had a few traumas early on. I mean, my parents split up when I was a teenager. There were some issues. I had a hard time reaching out to people. If anybody remembers me through my high school period, I had a gray hoodie, zip up, and a hat that I would wear over my head and over my eyes, and I would keep my head angled down so I could avoid everybody. It was kind of Unabomberish, honestly. And I didn't deal with people well. I especially didn't deal with girls very well, to be honest. That was something that took a long time to get around. Gaming started me on the path of getting around that. Playing with my friend in high school, and then I went to the school that he went to for my sophomore year. It only lasted for a year before they kicked me out. There was some unpleasantness that was involved, but a number of things happened. I met my best friend, and we got on like fire and oil. And even though the friend that I initially went there for left in my sophomore year, which made me feel very anchorless for a bit, all these other friends that gaming brought to me. Once I was just reading the manual that I had, and another boy who was also new to the school, he had come because his school had closed down, so he came to this one. And he looked over my shoulder and he said, "Do you play?" And I said, "Well, yeah." And he said, "Oh, you wanna run a game with me?" Well, yeah, I'd love to. Because up to this point, there hadn't been a lot of playing going on. My friend who originally brought me down there was hanging out with his friend, and his situation kind of was getting toxic. So I played with this boy. Other people saw we were playing, and even though we were at a place where normally you wouldn't expect to see a lot of role-playing games being played out in the open, a number of people saw what we were doing and said, "Hey, maybe this is a guy who might be fun to be with." And then my original friend introduced me to the person who would end up being my best friend, who was then a core to all of the games that I ran in that year. And I spent a ridiculous amount of time playing. It helped that I was fairly clever, and I got through schooling with a minimum amount of doing homework, and some things that I do regret. I do. I didn't put the kind of attention into my education that I should have. But I was growing by leaps and bounds with making friends, making connections, earning respect among my peers. Even though a lot of things were changing in me, I grew out of my shell a bit with these people. And those who didn't know about my hobby were saying, "Oh, good, he's making friends," or "These are people who care about him." But a lot of that I can credit gaming for, teaching me perspective, teaching me to look through other people's eyes, how to entertain other people, what worked and what didn't sometimes. And we tried all kinds of crazy things together, and it was a great time for experimenting with the hobby that I grew to enjoy, and dealing with a variety of other people. In my very sheltered upbringing, I didn't deal with a great range of people until the 6th grade, when we moved to Missouri for 2 years, which to me was basically hell. Did not enjoy that time at all. There were very few good things I could say out of my time there. And ultimately, that's where my parents ended up divorcing. But this experience, this renaissance that I had in high school, kind of came about by the vehicle of gaming. It gave me an escape out. After I was asked not to come back to that school because of reasons, I spent my last 2 years in public school, and I found other people to connect with gaming. I found another group, had some fun with them for a while, and then I was communicating with my best friend, who we still communicated with even after I was no longer going to his school. He graduated from the other school. And then we decided to go to college together at the same school. I threw away thousands and thousands of dollars in financial aid I would have had if I'd have stayed in my home state to college with my best friend. And still paying for it today. But in college, I reinvented myself. I went there a scared 17-year-old with a bit of money in my pocket from my graduation party and one friend that I knew and not a lot about life. I didn't know all kinds of things. I was so lost. But my parents, my family, they hadn't gone to college. They couldn't prepare me for what was going on. So I concentrated on the things I knew. I knew school, so I could throw myself into classes as best as I could. And I went to a college that was pretty good at having a broad range of different, courses that prepared me for what was expected upward. And I wasn't dumb. I made friends. But honestly, the best friends that I made through gaming. I found some people who were also English majors like me, English literature, minor in theater. And I found other English majors who roleplayed. It was a pretty easy conversation to fall into, hearing them talking about the games that they were involved. And I got myself invited to a game. This was not through my best friend. This was something I did on my own by making friends in the different classes that I had, and when they found out that I liked role-playing, they were nice enough to invite me. And I lucked out in the greatest way I can think of. I found some great guys who knew how to enjoy themselves in a safe fashion. They taught me a lot about life, a huge amount. I couldn't have reinvented myself in a completely healthy way without these guys helping me. And I give a ton of credit to my friends for this. Got into a game with them, played alongside of them. They put up with my run of bad puns, the lowest form of humor for the intelligentsia. And we told some great stories together. It turned out they had a game master at the time, so I bellied up to the table as a player for a while. Eventually, I asked if I could run a game, and they let me, and it was great. It was rough. It was a little rough. I was a little out of practice and such. But I was playing with other people, too, and I expanded my base, and I did a lot of things. But I was meeting people. I had broken out of my introverted shell. I was able to hold conversations with females, which was really hard for me prior to this. And eventually, in the summer after my freshman year, I got a girlfriend. And, I'm married to her this day, so that worked out pretty well for me. Through the various role-playing and the various friends that I met along the way, and the way that I learned perspective, I threw off the crippling stage fright that I had had. It absolutely wrecked me in my sophomore year of high school. I may have been able to stay at that school a little longer, possibly, if I could have gotten over my stage fright and not backed out of chorus, which required me to be in a part of a musical. I just couldn't do it. My sophomore year of college, I was in a stage production called Bella Vita. It was a wonderful little comedy piece. And there was some humor involved in that maybe I'll reveal to the audience of Lair of OmnusI at a future time. But acting helped make my gaming better. By learning the techniques to put myself into a character, I became much more adept at being able to crawl into the headspace of a character and understand motivations, to have more real motivations and better dialogue and things like that. So one thing fed another, until ultimately I became the person I am today. A person who still enjoys the role-playing games every bit as much as I used to. I've played dozens of these games. I've run campaigns that have stretched over years with my friends telling fantastic stories. I have a stack of character sheets, literally, huge. Different characters and people that I've played and gotten into the shoes of and played around and have fantastic stories for. It's given me an awful lot. It's given me focus for my writing, developing. It's increased my capacity for mental math and things. It's a very useful skill for many role-playing games. I am a better person as a result of my hobby of gaming. Are there some dark sides? Yes, but that's for another time. For the most part, it's been a positive influence in my life. It hasn't given me everything I've worked to get at this point, but it's given me a lot. And I like to think I'm happier, smarter as a result. So, I am Rob, but I'm also OmnusI, here in the Lair of OmnusI. And I thank you for joining me tonight, and I hope that you catch the next Lair of OmnusI as we shoot it here for another day of the RPG a day. May you have many successful adventures in your time, and I wish you farewell